gentlemen, it is 7 p.m. here in Tennessee, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Cooper Balitsos, and welcome to One Nation with Cooper Balitsos. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a historic day, a very big day. Like pretty much all of y'all have heard about what has happened in Latin America today between Venezuela and the U.S. First, to catch you up to speed around, just to get you up to speed real quick, Nicolas Maduro, the dictator or post-dictator, ex-dictator of Venezuela, was captured by U.S. armed forces today around 2 to 4 a.m. in the morning. But what happened, him and his wife are on the U.S. Jambalaya ship that's in the Caribbean, and he will be making his way to New York for justice, where he will be put in court and probably spend the rest of his life in jail. There was a $50 million bond or award to capture him, and the U.S. Armed Forces did capture him, and right now we know a lot of details about this strike, about this attack, but let's go to up to speed. Let's give you a little bit of a background story about Nicolas Maduro. So Nicolas Maduro is was the ex-president of Venezuela. He was president for around 13 years, from 2013 to 2026. And what happened? He's very famous for operating a vast empire of guns, drugs, that he's been sending up to the U.S. That's killing Americans, hundreds of thousands of Americans every day, and every year. Well, every year. Sorry, but no, he was in power for around 13 years, and during those 13 years, he made Venezuela one of the most dangerous countries in the world with guns, drugs. He made the GDP of Venezuela decline very rapidly, and he made the population, a quarter of the population, leave Venezuela and seek asylum, seek refuge in other countries all over the world. So that's a background story on Nicolas Maduro. Now, his wife that was captured, she used to be the Attorney General for the country of Venezuela, and was the First Lady of Venezuela for X amount of years, until today. But right now, they are both on a U.S. naval ship, like I said, that is going to New York City, where he will be put to jail and court, and justice will be served, what Pam Bondi said. But let's give you a timeline of what happened this morning. This morning, late last night on January 2nd, President Trump ordered around 10:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Mar-a-Lago in West Palm Beach, Florida, to order an attack and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Now, around 2:01 a.m. is the first reports, January 3rd, was the first reports of an attack of multiple rockets, missiles, if you could be precise, that was impacting the ground in the capital, Caracas, Venezuela. And there were 7 reported impacts on the ground. Many of those were, missiles or impacts hit major infrastructure. Some reports were saying government buildings, the Ministry of Defense, but there was that, and around 3:50 to 3 o'clock was a group of U.S. Marines, pretty much the Delta Task Force, allegedly came in to a safe house or the residential palace of Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro stays, and started taking out most of the security, and they captured him and sent him, and flew him back on a helicopter to the ship where he is right now, heading to New York, like I have said multiple times. And the fatalities, there was no fatalities for the U.S. There was one soldier that did get hit that was glazed by a bullet, and there was one helicopter that was damaged. There was 150 pretty much, there was 150 aircraft that was involved in this, from fire jets, F-35s, F-34s, to Black Hawk helicopters that were swarming all over Narcos, Venezuela, the capital of Venezuela. And around 4:29, everyone that were operating those aircraft did return back to the bases, or return back to the ships that were in the region. And casualties, there's a handful. There was a handful on the Venezuela side. There's multiple, probably I would say around around 50 casualties on the Venezuela side, and there was multiple casualties from the armed security guards that were guarding Nicolas Maduro in the safe house or palace in downtown Caracas, Venezuela. And this was a planned attack. This happened months ago. They started planning this months ago, and the U.S. President Trump, Marco Rubio, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave him the option to surrender, to wave the white flag, but he did not want to. And right now we know a little bit more of what's going to happen when he does get into the U.S. after break, but there is and we're going to tell you after break too about the international reactions to all the countries all over the world, that the reactions of the United States attacking Venezuela this morning. So, but that is a little bit of the background story and the timeline, and we will be right after the break of more about this special mission, this very heroic mission in Venezuela this morning. I'm Cooper Balitsos. We'll be right back after the break. And we're back from break, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us again. But ladies and gentlemen, if you were watching the press conference later this morning from Mar-a-Lago in West Palm Beach, Florida, with President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and General Raising Cane, they were talking about this overnight successful mission in Venezuela. So, like I've told you the details that they told the public today about, there was 150 aircraft that was that they used. A lot of these pilots had thousands of pilot hours to do this, and they planned this months and months and months ago. So another mixed reaction that a lot of the public is looking at right now is that President Trump, along with Secretary of War and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, will take over Venezuela. Now, that is what they said. I don't know in my opinion, I don't know how they're going to do that if you don't put boots on the ground, but that was the second thing I was going to say. They already have said that they might possibly put boots on the ground in Venezuela, but that is hard to believe from early this morning, as the Secretary of Defense, I don't even know how to say his name, but he has said that he has moved all the reserve military and the military on the coast if there will be a U.S. invasion. Now, I don't say this is going to be a U.S. invasion, but I say this is going to be, um, I will say that there's going to be soldiers that will come in and control the city of Narcos and lots of other cities. I wouldn't say this is an invasion, but I don't know how they would work with that if the Venezuelan military is on the coast. I don't know how they are going to get that. Another military that is in the region is Colombia. Colombia president this morning, he was one of the first to pretty much react to this bombing, and he was actually the first to say that it was the U.S. Before even the U.S. condemned the strike. Before the U.S. Confirmed the strikes, he has already said he has already put the military. Supposedly, he has moving the military towards the border of Venezuela, so refugees from Venezuela won't come into Colombia. But there's that. There's also the vice president. Like I have said, the current vice president has become the new acting president of Venezuela. I don't know how to say her name. She is right now in Russia. She cannot get back to the homeland in Venezuela, but she has already spoken to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and right now ties with her and the Trump administration are steady right now. But she is not in the country of Venezuela currently right now. She is in Russia. Another person that I thought that would be captured in this morning's attack and abduction, I would say it is the Secretary of Interior and Peace and Justice. I don't know how to say his name. I really don't. It's so hard, but I thought he would be captured in this attack because he is another person that is linked to a lot of these drugs and weapon smuggling that is coming to the U.S. And the FBI has awarded $25 million of a person who can capture him. That's one person I thought that maybe the U.S. would get, but another person that would get. But that is one thing. But the U.S. President Trump has also said that a lot of these oil companies, Chevron, Shell, BP, British Petroleum, will come to Venezuela and invest billions of dollars into the infrastructure, rebuild the infrastructure and oil fields and oil refineries in Venezuela. What he has said, and Chevron has already announced this, that they will, and many other oil companies have done too. Another thing right now is that they said that the FAA has suspended all commercial flights that are coming out of the U.S. to Venezuela due to this escalating thing. The embassy in the United States has was issuing a shelter-in-place order this morning. I believe that shelter-in-place order is still going on right now. But like I've said, President Trump stated that he is going to be running the country as much time as he can until it is safer, until justice is brought back to the people. And so there's that. And like I've said, the vice president has become the new acting president. I don't know how to say her name. I feel like DC Rogniza, I told you I don't know how to say it, but there's that, and there's many other top news stories coming out of the Caribbean. But after this break, we will talk about possibly, maybe, what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this morning at the press conference, maybe the country that we will be next. And we'll talk about world leaders' reaction and Washington's reaction. We'll be right back after the break. This is One Nation with Cooper Balitsos. ladies and gentlemen. We are on One Nation with Cooper Balitsos. But like I said right before break, the reactions, the international reaction from all over the world came in very, very fast. The first reaction was the president of Colombia, whatever his name is. I can't even pronounce half these names. Um, he he was the first one to condemn these attacks on Venezuela soil. He was the first one to say that the U.S. was involved before the U.S. confirming it, like I've said. But the first, another one was Brazilian President Luiz Guandu Silva that condemned the strikes on the capture of Maduro. In Chile, the outgoing President Gabriel Boric condemned the strikes, calling for a peaceful resolution to the crisis. But the president-elect Josh Cast said that the capture of Maduro was great news for the region. Another key ally for Trump was President Javier Milei for Argentina, that said that this is great for the people of Venezuela, that freedom, now they live in a free world. Another big reaction was from China. The foreign minister, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they had a group inside in the capital of Venezuela at the time, and they condemned the attack, and they were deeply shocked and strongly condemned the U.S. for reckless using force against a sovereign state. One thing that a lot of people know, that Venezuela has allies with Russia, China, and Iran, and Cuba. We did not hear from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but we did hear from Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs. Most of these are foreign affairs. We did hear from the Supreme Leader from Iran, that said that he condemns these attacks, he condemns these attacks that the U.S. has made. Qatar, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Qatar, was deeply concerned about the attacks, and said for a de-escalation is the best thing to do. In Europe, Germany, the Chancellor, the President of Germany, Friedrich Merz, said that Nicolas Maduro has led his country into ruin, and this is a great thing for the people and the country. In Greece, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Greece said that they are closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela. In Italy, there was they said that this is a chance for freedom for the Venezuelan people too. But one of our biggest reaction was from United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, stated that the UK has long supported a transition of power in Venezuela. We regard Maduro as a threatening president, and we shed no tears about the end of his regime. Adding that always believe that we should all uphold international law. He also clarifies that the United Kingdom was not involved in these strikes, that they were not. And like I said before, the next country that Secretary of State Marco Rubio did say that could be invaded next is Cuba, is the island of Cuba. Now, this is a little shocking, but to give you a background story on Cuba, Cuba has always been an ally. It's been like the half-brother to Russia. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, probably one of the closest times we were ever going to shoot a nuke off from the United States with President John F. Kennedy. Another thing is of Cuba was the Bay of Pigs that killed 4 U.S. soldiers that tried to kill Fidel Carrasco, one of the longest communists that ever ran Cuba, for probably the longest communist that ran Cuba for the longest time. But the Cuban president, Mayoral Canal, announced that it is a criminal act by the U.S. on Venezuela, and he called for urgent condemnation from the international community for what he has described as a state terrorism against the brave Venezuelan people and against our America. So that was that from Cuba. But what Marco Rubio has said, he has said that that Cuba is a island that is declining. It's been declining for a very long time with the economy, with humanitarian crisis, with a famine. They had one of the longest blackouts in the world's history this past year, and it's a very big reason. It's a very big reason why Cuba is the way it is, because of this communist president. But there's that, and mixed reactions from Washington D.C. is to Senator Mike Lee. What at first was very surprised and what did not think this was right, but after talking to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he changed his mind. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he called President Trump reckless, and that the American people vote for a reckless president and should be thinking about second choices right now. And there's a lot more mixed reactions. AOC, for general, said that this was not about capturing Nicolas Maduro, was not for drugs. It was about oil and money for the economy in the U.S. That is what AOC, Senora Cortez, or what her name is, said. But there's that. And actually, talking about her, let's talk about New York City. Yes, Nicolas Maduro and his wife are heading to New York City for indictment and all that, and justice, and court and all that. But Zoran Mandani has become the new mayor of New York City. He has created lots of new cabinet positions. The new cabinet position of engagement, of civic engagement, public engagement, that I don't know what that is. I probably couldn't really understand him about yesterday what that was, but he has created a chief climate officer, the CCO, and lots of other more administration staff. The first ever transgender fire chief is on Mandani's team. She has had no fire experience, actually. She's never worked a day in her life as a firefighter. The Jessica Tisch, that is the incumbent police commissioner during Eric Adams, will be staying on for the administration staff as police commissioner for Zoran Mandani. But Zoran Mandani, like he has said, his main goals is free universal child care. He's already declared war on landlords in the city of New York, and wants to freeze rent actually too, and make transportation, subways, ferries, buses all free in the city of New York. And how he wants to pay for this, he wants to raise the corporate tax by I think around 50% to 100%. But there is that. Our actually sports story is is that Ole Miss beat Georgia on Thursday night. That actually, if you're watching, they had to play. They had to play again and again because the referees. But they will be playing Miami. Sorry, Miami, and Oregon will be playing Indiana. And those four teams will be playing each other, and whoever the two winners are will be playing in the national championship on January 19th, just a couple weeks from now. That is actually Martin Luther King Day. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching One Nation with Cooper Balitsos. We hope to see you again next week. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. I'm sorry I have not been posting, but I've been posting now. I'm starting to post again now. Thank you for watching me, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you.